You are listening to Talking Earth on KBOO 90.7 FM in Portland. Our next reader is poet and artist Willa Schneeberg. Willa was born in New York and studied ceramics in New York and New Orleans. She graduated from Empire State College in '73 with a degree in creative writing and fine arts. Working with residents at a Jewish nursing home in Massachusetts convinced her to pursue a graduate degree in social work at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. She then traveled the world from Israel to the Far East, teaching art and clay sculpture. From 1992 to 93, she worked for the UN in Cambodia. Her 2006 collection, Storytelling in Cambodia, is a cycle of linked poems that ranges from the rich history of that country to the killing fields and bears witness to all those who have endured holocausts. Willa has lived and worked in Portland since 1993. Many people here know her as a poet and interdisciplinary artist. Not so well known is Willa's professional life as a psychotherapist, working in private practice in Portland since 1996. Tonight, she reads from The Naked Room, an as yet unpublished but prize-winning manuscript about the practice of psychotherapy. In Willa's poem, Dr. Anonymous, she quoted from a revolutionary and transformative speech given in 1972 at the American Psychological Association by Dr. James E. Fryer. She gave him two voices, one with the words he actually used in the speech, and one with the words she surmised he might be saying in his head. I volunteered to read unrehearsed the words he actually spoke, which unfortunately contained an abhorrent racial epitaph. The words are a transcription of what he actually said. I opened with asking Willa a question. I know you're not a specialist, you're a generalist with a wide range of interests, and you've managed to synthesize them all. You want to tell us about that?
I have always had a commitment to my poetry and visual art, and I needed to find a way to make a living. And then I found that for me, I didn't want to necessarily go the MFA route. And fairly early, when I was still living in New York City after college, I wound up facilitating a poetry group with people who had been hospitalized, wonderful creative people who had serious mental health issues. And we started doing a class together where they wrote amazing poems. And then we even published a little pamphlet of their work. And I felt that was so satisfying to have the experience of people who did not consider themselves poets. So it was very meaningful to me. And then I realized that there is such a field as poetry therapy and art therapy. And in the 80s, for a year, I lived in Israel, and I worked with an art therapist there in a mental hospital in Sfat, which is in the northern part of Israel. It's considered the Kabbalistic capital of Israel. And even when I was there, I facilitated a poetry group with people who just cared about poetry, mostly people who emigrated from English-speaking countries. So that's how I could facilitate a poetry writing group. It was mostly generative, but there was also some critiquing as part of that group.
The Naked Room is unique in that the psychotherapist mask is off. You are both writing about the history, the dark, sometimes dark history of psychiatric care for mental patients in the U.S., writing in the voice of various patients who are in mental and emotional crisis, and writing in your own voice as a psychotherapist, what you feel when you have been dealing with the patient. So it's a very full tapestry. The first section is called Asylum, and I'm telling you, it's about the early history of psychotherapy and the way it was practiced. And it is very, very harsh, so harsh, in fact, that I'm just going to have you read a little excerpt from the Asylum. Would you read a little part from the Tub Seduction and tell us about that?
Okay, I'll give you a little overview. It's interesting, the word harsh. I would like to say as more just revealing of where we are at different periods in history, like looking back. Somebody will look back at our time and see things that we just think of as sort of normalized that would be seen as quite heinous. And so this poem is the Tub Seduction, and I'm just going to be reading the second part, has an epigraph that in 1908, Dr. Charles Pilgrim instituted tub therapy at the Hudson River State Hospital. So I think you'll get a sense, even from the second part of the poem, what tub therapy might mean. Time for your watery bed. You embarrassed your spouse again, coming to that dinner party without your blouse, foolishly giving away your ruby necklace to the maid. Proper will soak in. You'll repose in my hard crib until you are pliant, cheerful, and prune-like. Hours and days will dissolve, biscuits and tea, fresh fish sticks and cranberry juice, meatloaf and mineral water will float into your mouth. Thank you for lending me your corporality, your blush, your legs, your buttocks, your back, and the nape of your neck. You keep me hard.
And the patriarchal treatment and view not only of women, but of LBGT people comes through in this section of Asylum, the heavy hand of convention that fell especially on women, but not only on women, and it lasted for a long time. Would you read the Dr. Henry Anonymous poem and tell us about what year that was?
I totally agree with your summation, and sadly, some of it is still going on. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this poem so there's some context. The title is Dr. Henry Anonymous Speaks at the 1972 APA Conference. Now, there is an epigraph, but there's also in this manuscript, which is not a book yet, it's getting closer to being a book. I have notes because some of these historical happenings people may not know and they need some more context. So basically, Dr. Henry Anonymous, his real name is John E. Fryer. His speech, which I will be using part of his speech and then imagining what he is saying, was cited as a key factor in the decision to delist homosexuality as a mental illness from the American Psychological Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Dr. Henry Anonymous speaks at the 1972 APA conference. The epigraph reads, the panel, psychiatry, friend or foe of the homosexual, had a gay astronomer and a lesbian activist, but no psychiatrist. So one was recruited. In the DSM-2, queerness was labeled a disturbance of sexual orientation. And if you saw it on the page, it's clear by italics what is actually from a speech and what I imagined.
Can you change your voice to let us know?
I can say.
Or I could read his.
Okay, why don't you read his? That's a great idea, Barbara.
Okay. I am a homosexual. I am a psychiatrist.
I am not using my name. Donning this ridiculous mask, a baggy tuxedo, a bow tie, a wig of wild curly hair to retain my current position. Since Tricky Dick is still president, it wasn't hard to find an easy to alter Nixon mask in a joke shop.
We homosexual psychiatrists must deal with what I call, in quotes, nigger, unquote, syndromes. We must know our place and be more healthy than our heterosexual counterparts. When your fellow professionals denigrate the faggots, don't just stand by idly.
I've always been theatrical or flamboyant. That's what I was called at my last position when they fired me. I've been known to wear wild patterned dashikis and bring a room to order by ringing a cowbell. So here I am, facing you, speaking into a microphone that warps my voice, beseeching you to see this psychiatrist not as a pervert, but merely as a person who prefers male partners to the female sex. I'm wearing a mask, but the one I always wear doesn't peel off.
And changes in the therapeutic world continued well into the 80s. At some point in the 80s, people decided that asylums were very bad things. And they instituted a policy called deinstitutionalization. As a kindness, the asylums were shut down. Would you read that poem?
Even the ones that exist, nowhere equipped to deal with all the folks that might need to be there. And if we know that a high percentage of houseless people are mentally ill. Deinstitutionalization. And this is, I often write the persona poem, and this is in the voice of a person who's living in an SRO. Like everybody else, I want my own place. Tired living with so many crazy people and the yelling. Plug my ears with my fingers to try to block out nasty noise. Mean voices still won't let me be, even in this SRO where nobody's here but me. Lots of flies around here, Frosty, Fudge, Metamucil. Piles of duty, it stinks. The flies don't mind. Someone must have shit on the floor. They used to serve me my meds before. Once they showed me how to put them in little plastic cages. But my pills want to be free like me. I asked for the right to fail. I like my frilly apron, although cooking hates me. Lost the can opener for Heinz beans. Eggs are my favorite. They're good, soft, or hard. A brown can dance in boiling water. Some pig pills escape under my pillow. Some kiss ants in the sugar bowl. I should get me a mortar and pestle. My grandma had one of them. The pilot light stopped working. Frosty buzzes. Light a match. You won't explode. You'll burn up all tinsely and glitter. Find a matchbook. Flames lick my frilly. They won't coil me. I wear my glass suit.
And when she said, I asked for the right to fail, was that asking for the right to not take the pills?
I think the right to not be institutionalized. It's larger than just the pills.
Find a matchbook, Flames lick my frilly. They won't coil me. I wear my glass suit. This is a woman who obviously needed help and assistance after the deinstitutionalization, which didn't come.
Absolutely. And clearly I was trying, and I think we know as poets how to get inside the mind of someone that we may not know and we just have invented. But I wanted to try to depict what happens when a person is psychotic and they're actively psychotic and not medicated. And this is, that belief that they're not going to die. They have this glass suit that will protect them. So it's a delusional thinking.
Right. And another example of the voice of a person who's in the midst of a florid psychosis is the poem Tree. Would you read that, Tree?
And this is part of a larger poem that's called Florid. It's the second section, and it's just describing that process. Because sometimes psychosis can have some very beautiful aspects, and a person doesn't want to leave that reality. Tree. You inch towards me with your shapely trunk, full head of leaves and supple limbs. You seduce me with your furrowed bark, white and scaly with black frowns and mascara-lidded eyes. Your splinters are tongue kisses. You make my body gossamer, barring deep inside your hollow, through inner bark and sapwood to heartwood. I am alive there. But someone will call my name, tell me I'm sick again, and kidnap me to a foreign place called home.
That's very interesting in terms of some of the latest science about plants and trees, and the fact that they communicate with each other, and some say with us also. So who knows what reality this woman was stepping into. Certainly it was a real reality to her. In interviewing a new therapist, you give us directions on what a good therapist, how a good therapist ought to respond to these florid hallucinations that patients have. Would you read that?
Sure. And there's one thing I forgot to mention, that because of confidentiality, anything that relates to a person is a coincidence. This is basically taken from, what I've read, from my own experience as a therapist, but there's nothing that would reveal anyone's identity.
Right.
This poem is trying to think about the fact that the client, they're the ones that are interviewing a therapist, and they need to feel empowered and not like the therapist is interviewing them. They have to feel that the therapeutic encounter is really one where they feel truly supported. So this is in the voice of a client. Interviewing a new therapist. I don't really know what I'm saying, but I'll call it empathetic linguistics. When I say my mind freezes, a therapist should be curious. How does it feel to have a mind like that? How does it feel really, a therapist might say. It must be very frustrating when your mind screeches to a halt. I need to be understood. Let's say I was molested by a tree. It doesn't matter that trees are incapable of such things or that I have a fear of raindrops. The worst thing you can do is respond, rain isn't harmful, you go out in the rain all the time. In fact, you just came in from the rain. Sorry. That negation of my feelings actually damages me. I need compassion for the pain underneath. so the memory of the original fucked up thing done to me can emerge and I might heal. Since my current therapist has no fucking clue, I'll continue to cancel.